I know what you're thinking. What in the heck in today's economy is only going to cost 1 cent that's going to facilitate training to get nice tight shot groups when we're talking defensive accuracy against an attacker? All right, this is Mike from Cold War Tactical. Let's get to it. Now, when we hear the saying, aim small to miss small, what that correlates to in defensive techniques is I want you to have something very finite on your target's anatomy to aim at. You're going to get your eagle eye, your tunnel vision. When it starts to kick in, I want you to hyper focus on something on your attacker's anatomy, and that's going to get your tunnel vision focused there. When we have a very finite point of aim, we tend to correlate that with very tight shot groups. If you're taking your entire target in your visual field, then that tends to correlate to much wider shot groups and a lot of misses completely off of your attacker. That is no bueno, because not only is it not having a physiological effect on that attacker, you're putting innocent third parties potentially at risk. The standard that I like my students to strive for is, while presenting with speed and urgency, to be able to maintain a 6-inch shot group on their target up high in the thoracic area. This correlates nicely to where the heart and vascular system is. This is going to cause a physiological response. Physiologically, we know it takes about 30 or 40% of our attacker's blood volume to be lost before they are bona fide no longer a threat. At that point, the brain starts shutting down. They start getting a little bit loopy or losing consciousness. That is when they're no longer a threat. Now, granted, as soon as they stop whatever gave you justification, you must stop engaging. So with that level of intro being out of the way, what 1 cent training aid is going to take us from the big picture to something very small and finite, so we get those nice tight shot groups, hopefully achieving about a 6-inch group. I'm not super good at math, but if we get a 1,000 count pack of little 3/4 inch sticky dots for around $8 to $10, that's less than a penny a piece. Now we'll dig into a little bit of how I incorporate these little blue sticky dots into a student's defensive training. The drill that I tend to start most students out, regardless of skill level, is focusing on a 3/4 inch dot on a white target backer. Now, since we're talking defensive skills, I'm not expecting the student to knock this blue dot off the paper like a carnival chute. I want them to apply speed, but some deliberate focus on that dot. So initially, I'll start the student out typically at 3 yards. The initial focus is on getting a nice tight shot group, looking for anomalies and coaching any fundamental errors. And then as we increase both the speed of the presentation and the distance to the target, then the size of the target or the acceptable group increases. We'll go from a 3/4 inch dot to a 3-inch dot, typically between 3 to 5 yards. And then once we go from 5 to 7 or 10 yards, then we increase that target to about a 6-inch circle. So when using the 3 or 6-inch circles, I will still put a little 3/4 inch sticky dot dead center of it, because that gives the student something very finite to focus in on. The size of the circle, the 3-inch or the 6-inch, just gives them their standard, the metric of are they keeping their shot group tight enough for the given distance or speed that they're expected to engage. If they're starting to throw rounds outside of that 3-inch or 6-inch circle, then I have them slow down and focus on the fundamentals, focus on their technique, smoothing things out until they get it back inside that 3 or 6-inch circle. If they're getting too tight of a shot group, if they're nailing that little blue dot and obliterating the center of that circle, then they probably are going a little bit slower than what they're capable of. I want them to pick up the rate of engagement just an itty bit, so they're using that 3-inch or 6-inch circle. If they can go super fast and always nail the blue dot, so much the better, but the standard is getting it out on target rickety tick and keeping your shots within whatever the prescribed standard is for that distance, the speed, or the drill. So that's how we incorporate a 3/4 inch little sticky dot into our skill building sessions. Now let's talk about how to incorporate the same type of concept into our tactical decision making drills. So as we shift away from skill building to tactical decision making, we want to incorporate something like a photorealistic target. Now recall our scanning techniques. We're going to start at the face initially, because as humans we tend to focus in on people's faces. When we detect that they may be a threat, quickly scan down, do they have a weapon in their hand? Any type of weapon, a blunt force object or a projectile launcher. Once you determine that you or someone else is at a risk of death or serious bodily injury, you're going to immediately shift your focus from the weapon in their hand to something very finite on that target's anatomy up high in the center of the chest, such as the zipper on this guy's hoodie. Now also keep in mind this is referred to as a low percentage type of target because Sparky down here is kind of in the way, so you must be very focused and hit what you're aiming at. Now in the beginning stages, you can use that 3/4 inch dot by placing it on where your desired point of aim is going to be. So using a training aid like this, we're using it as a forcing function. So as you conduct your scan, you will automatically shift your focus back to that little dot. Aiming small and then missing small. You may miss the zipper, but I want you to hit all up there high in the thoracic cavity. Now in short order, you should be able to omit the little dot and just be able to shift your visual focus from the weapon in the hand to right at the anatomy you're trying to hit. Remember, as soon as you get your sights on target, verify within a millisecond and then smoothly finish off that trigger, letting the rounds rip right there into the anatomy, keeping it all within that 6-inch group we discussed previously. Now, whereas this little 3/4 inch blue sticky dot is going to cost you about a penny a piece, photorealistic targets are going to run about $1.50 to $2 or more, depending on what you get, who you get it from, and the volume you purchase them at. Now, despite their cost, they're still a very valuable tool when it comes to those tactical decision-making skill sets, especially if we're using proper scanning techniques, shifting our visual focus from where the weapon is in the hand to the part of the anatomy that we want to actually engage. So as good as photorealistic targets are in incorporating to our tactical decision-making skills, they are still only a 2-dimensional representation of what in reality is going to be a 3-dimensional threat. So next, let's talk about 3D targets as part of our training program. So using the same exact scanning technique we did before, we're going to quickly glance from the face to the weapon in the hand to either the zipper, a button, the V-neck, something on the target's anatomy that will allow us that very fine focal aim. If your target isn't wearing a shirt at all, then you can look at equal distance between the pectoral muscles. And then also keep in mind the unfortunate reality is, even if you're delivering an accurate volume of fire high up into the thorax of your target, you may or may not see an immediate physiological or psychological response. Therefore, we want to continue to deliver accurate fire until that threat has stopped doing whatever gave us that justification to immediately use deadly force in defense of ourselves or others. The other thing that using clothing on your 3-dimensional targets helps to reinforce is that you may or may not be able to visualize where you're impacting on the target, unlike a 2-dimensional target of paper or steel where you get to see where those hits are immediately. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that brings us full circle as to how that 3/4 inch little sticky dot, that 1-cent training aid, will enhance your defensive marksmanship skills. All these targets we discussed here will be in that description box below. If you like this type of content, make sure you hit that like, subscribe, share it with your peers in your community. Until next time, God bless you and stay safe.